everyone, welcome to AIDO Network International Business and Prosperity Forum 2020. I'm Ann Hamburger from AIDO Network International. This segment is brought to you by AIDO Network International and Raya TV Kenya. The topic is on digital, ICT, 4IR and beyond. The panelists will be discussing on how to use ICT to be able to get better education, access to healthcare, and rapid growth on key sectors like agriculture and manufacturing. Hosted by Pamela Lubayo and moderated by Sifokazi Mandla.
Okay, so we are going to move on to our next panel discussion. And this is the digital ICT, 4IR and beyond. And I'll call upon the moderator, and this is Sifokazi. If you're here, please.
It is evening on my side of the shores. Greeting you from the Mpumalanga province of South Africa. Could be morning, it could be afternoon elsewhere in the world where you are. So greeting everyone and all, as they would say, protocol observed, excellencies that have joined us and people that have stayed on and been patient. To sit through all the panels. I must say the previous panel really, with the jewelry that's in there, made me want to have lots of money so I can buy lots of pieces from what was presented. So we appreciate it, and we can see creativity and innovation cuts across board, whether it's in jewelry or in technology. My name is Sifokazi Mandla, and we'll have a panel tonight that will be talking about digital inclusion. The International Telecommunications Unit in 2019 gave a report that 87% of people in developed countries had access to the internet, compared to the 47% in developing countries. Now, we would know that Africa sits in developing countries statistics, which means that we sit in a margin of below 50% of people having access to the internet. And it would be no big understanding to know that we need technology. I saw a depiction of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, where they were putting in connectivity and internet at level 1, right there with food and shelter. And that kind of like gave me a feel, and especially we've seen it with lockdown and COVID, how much technology helps us to even run a conference of this nature that AIDO can be able to host in 3 countries, in lots of countries and in 3 continents. And I think it's said counting. So technology really has an impact. I'll just give you a definition of digital inclusion. Digital inclusion means that digital technology, using digital technology to improve an inclusive development and leaving no person, home, or organization behind. And I'll just hone in on the comment of saying not leaving anyone behind. How do we make sure that we don't leave anyone behind in an environment that tells us 47% of the people only have access? With my panelists that we have tonight, I'll just take them through to say, if we look at technology and we want to look at skills, we want to look at applications, we want to look at tools, Yandi, could you give us how technology does address or has addressed, and in a space where everyone is talking about the 4th industrial revolution, how do we make sure that we improve from 47% and make sure we don't get to leave people behind in the whole continent that we love so much?
Thank you, Sifokazi. Greetings, everyone, all protocol observed. It's a critical conversation that we really need to have. If you look at that, definitely we are in the 47 percentile, and which is concerning. And if you look at the African population, which is mainly youth, these are youth which is very digital savvy. But the circumstances they find themselves in is lack of access. So firstly, before we move to the 4IR to digital inclusion, we need to start and look back, what are the basics? Wi-Fi is definitely the new oxygen. It's a basic need, it's a necessity. Actually, it is connectivity, whether it's a broadband, it's access to data, or data affordability, or just basic connectivity. Before people start using digital technologies, they need to be online. So the critical thing that we need to look at is, how do we get everyone else online first, so that we can enable all the other services that they can have, like what you spoke about, fintech, agri-tech, and do all of the other good stuff that technology brings. So this is a conversation that doesn't only just look at government, or it's not really specific to a certain demographic. We need to start looking at the challenges within Africa and start creating a plan of how do we get ourselves out of the situation, so that this divide doesn't really grow as COVID has just pushed us into this digital transformation. One, government needs to start working with corporate. So it is a multi-stakeholder approach where we can look at government, we look at corporate, we look at organizations, SMMEs, and how do they come together to actually address the need, because there are SMMs playing in the connectivity space. There's government who provides the infrastructure and actually make sure that these businesses thrive. There is corporate who is a beneficiary of all of this and can be an enabler of all those other services. So if these entities or these sectors can all talk together and find a way of working together so that we start addressing the issues. Those are different methods. From corporate, you can look at the CSI budgets first to say, how do we channel that CSI budget to digital inclusion? Government, how do you make use of the infrastructure that is available so that you can give access to your communities? And then how do SMMEs, because SMMEs are actually on the ground working with the people, and how do you bring in the royal houses, and also the organizations like AIDO to come together and open the channels for these corporates and these SMMEs to actually reach the people, because they understand the problems better, and also they understand the access better. So it's a multi-stakeholder approach that needs to be taken so that we don't leave more people behind, because that gap it has got a potential of actually widening if we don't start with the infrastructure and the connectivity problem.
Just as a follow-on on that question, if we were to compare mobile versus what we used to have as what we call fixed line, and now there's technologies with fiber rollout, and whether satellite, which one of those do you think is most prominent to grow? And where is the emphasis going to be in the next 3 to 5 years? And as a business person in this market, if you were making a plea to the AIDO, to the royalties that are here, what would you ask of them to participate in your world today?
Okay, right now, broadband connectivity is the backbone of the connectivity. Satellite is there, it reaches more people, quite expensive to deploy. And then you have, broadband will enable actually Wi-Fi, it will enable 5G. The world is going on 5G, but are we 5G ready as a continent? So that's why with every transformation that we're doing, we need to first understand where we are. So each country has got different dynamics in terms of their connectivity. In South Africa, we are already pushing on the 5G line. Everyone is getting ready, from towers to backhauling issues. But how do we then look at each country to say, where are we? What works best, But if we have to look at technologies, broadband is still the backbone, as it enables that Wi-Fi, it enables that 5G connectivity as well. And, because we still have rural areas, the infrastructure also is quite costly. Hence, it is important to look at the different demographics, and because it's not a one size fits all. So you'll have to actually look at the different areas. but the access will be provided by organizations like AIDO. It is the royal houses. You can't go into a rural area without touching base with the chief or the king in those areas. So which is, they know best in terms of what is the need of the people. And it is now to look at that and survey to see what will actually work best. Satellite really works in other places. We've seen TV white spaces, still a bit high to deploy. However, it does have a reach and can actually help with the rural areas as well. So I would say it is a combination of all, depending whether you are urban, peri-urban, or semi-urban. So those are the issues that we really need to look at. But what I really believe, if there is an integrated way where the telcos, who are essentially providing the connectivity, can work with government, with association, and have that multi-stakeholder approach, we can be able to see, and without even duplicating a lot of infrastructure. And when it comes to the internet access and also the broadband rollout, we see that here in South Africa, that the Department of Communications, to say, will run their own fiber line. Next door to it, there's another telco running or internet provider running their own line. There's no full visibility of what is on the ground, especially in the government sectors. So if government can roll out the infrastructure, hand over the infrastructure and rent it out to private companies, ISPs, to say, here's the infrastructure, because the biggest cost is actually the infrastructure. But then they lack in terms of doing the services and bringing them to the people. Then give that to ISPs, which are internet service providers, the smaller companies that know the market, that know the people. And then in that sense, not only are you enabling your SMMEs to grow in the sector, but you're also enabling the connectivity to the people, because the small businesses are so agile. They'll go there faster, they're hungry, and they don't have policy issues or frameworks that they need to follow that will take time to actually get the rollouts to the people.
Whenever we talk about connectivity and rollout, about a week ago, I went and bought a Huawei phone, and having to switch from Google because of the East and the West dynamic got me thinking, why am I not having a phone that is manufactured by an African, so that I don't have to sit between the squabbles that are happening, whether I go the other side, which is the Western side, or I go the Eastern side. And that got me thinking that, is it either the skills that we don't have, or is it the inability for us to produce plants and market our own product, which then got me to thinking about the skills that we ought to have in this type of environment. And I thank you, Yandisa, for what you've just shared with us. But I know one of the panelists, and Mangaliso, is involved in skills development. I want to use an African phone. I don't want to have to choose between the East and the West squabbles. How do we make sure that this access that Yandi is talking about is available for me to use an African produced phone, so that I can choose, and if I want to program it in Swahili, I have access to do that without having to go English. Mangaliso, are you on the group to maybe share with us what are some of the skills gap that have created this digital exclusion, and how then do we make it possible to reduce that gap?
Good evening, Sipogazi. Thank you for the opportunity. Your Highness, all protocol observed. You ask a very critical question, Sipogazi, around digital inclusion. Skills development has posed a major challenge with the emergence of the digital transformation on the African continent as a whole. South Africa has not been spared of this. We currently face a major skills deficit with regards to digital skills. And this is both prevalent on the labor market and both on the schooling system. On the labor markets, we recognize that there is a major mismatch between the current available skill set and the skills needed by the labor market.
Mm-hmm.
This is also evident in the schooling system, and I bring in the schooling system because that's my major focus as Africa Kids Code in terms of skilling kids for future skills. This is also prevalent because our children are being taught for jobs that we do not have yet. These jobs don't exist yet. So, and the current situation, I would say, is perpetuated by the major challenges that are still prevalent in the continent with regards to digital inclusion, as you mentioned. So, for example, with data, like Yandisa said, being a new currency and a new oil, as they say, access is still a challenge for the majority of the population who are facing poverty, inequality, and unemployment. So, for example, in schools, the schools that I work with, infrastructure in schools, for instance, is a major deterrent. Most of the schools in Africa are still dealing with issues that existed in the second industrial revolution. For us to even talk about the fourth industrial revolution is major exclusion of at least half the population in Africa. But be that as it may, Africa has no alternative but to recognize and capitalize on 4IR opportunities. The price, because the price of getting left behind would be too high. We need to embark on inclusive economic growth models that will focus on reskilling our labor force and relooking at the school curriculum. In terms of reskilling our labor force, the South African government has actually embarked on a massive drive to equip 1 million youth with digital skills by year 2030. And those youth are being equipped in the skills shortage, in skills such as AI, cybersecurity, coding, data science, etc. However, to go back to the school curriculum, as I said, subjects such as coding should be integrated into the schooling curriculum, because if we want to have a future-enabled workforce, we don't have an option anymore. For example, just like we are expected to read, write, and count, coding has become the fourth literacy. Therefore, young people at school need to be prepared for such in order for them to be compatible for future skills. I must say that this is not a government obligation only. Civil society organizations such as NGOs need to be part of creating the sustainable implementation plan that focuses on reskilling, on developing and enable infrastructure on the continent, on developing technical support, and a focus on safety and security, particularly in school environments.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that other literacy and trying to figure out whether my 5-year-old son, is it the right age for him to start coding? What is the right age for kids to start coding?
4 years is enough to start, because you don't necessarily introduce them to the actual syntax and programming languages, but you introduce them to project-based fun projects that introduce them to coding without them even realizing that they're learning coding. And they're learning soft skills behind, such as problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork, and stuff like that. So we start them literally at 4 years old.
Okay, so it means I'm already a year behind.
Yes. If you go to countries such as Singapore, you will realize that coding is integrated into the curriculum. So kids at about 5 years old are already playing around on their tablets and creating interesting projects using coding.
That's amazing. Is it even for artists, for creatives? Because one of my reservation with the techno world is that it wants to convert everyone to technologists. And my take is that we'll still need musicians, we still need artists, we still need drawers. So is it a must?
I agree with you, Spogaze. However, with the digital disruption, unfortunately, every aspect of the work that we do will have some kind of tech integrated into it. So in as much as we are not teaching people to be computer scientists, however, we are teaching them to be rather digitally literate, because every aspect in the future of you can see it now in agriculture. You see, you are seeing drones, you are seeing, and agriculture was just a very labor intensive industry, not very long ago, where you wouldn't even think that technology would ever be part of it. But today you can sit and do amazing things just from your laptop, get data and all that. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that there is no industry that will be spared of technology, hence the need to expose everyone, actually.
And it's almost, I want to take, I'm almost, if I had water with me, I'd be drinking water to that. Because you're right when you say, I think we're soon going to run out of vowels, because first it was iPhone, iPod, anything, and now it seems to be everything. So it's e-health, it's e-education, it's e-agriculture. I don't know whether next we're going to have an O something, but there's only 5 vowels in the 26 letters. And now when you're mentioning that, I want to pick on one industry, the e-agriculture. And Africa having a lot of ground that it has got, and agriculture being one of our strongest, I guess next to mining, that we really need to come in on and compete with the rest of the world in. Norma, I know you are one of the, you are also in the panels group. If we look at the industry for electronic agriculture, what does the future look like? What do we do differently so that we keep being competitive, and also we are on par and not have a developing and a developed people that are in transitioning, people who are already there? How do we use technology to have us play that catch up that Mangaliso is talking about? Maybe she'll just be able to join in a bit later for us. But maybe if we look into any, between you, Yandi, and Mangaliso, if you look at all the domains, you mentioned for one, drone technology that is used in the agricultural industry. There was a panel, 2 panels, the panel before the jewelry and the mining one spoke to fintech. And you can see in various domains of industries. I know I'm involved with the side of electronic health and making sure that patients move with their files and records from the clinic that is in the rural area straight to town without having to transport the file with them. What are some of the improvements that using access and using skills we could use, as you say, to force ourselves out of the 2nd revolution up to the 4th, and using platforms like AIDO to have those as the springboards for us to move forward?
Okay, I'll go first. So one of the things that you also mentioned is that technology somehow is going to get everybody to be a technologist. So the one thing about technology right now is that it just cuts across every single sector. So it doesn't matter where you are interacting with technology in your daily lives. So with different industries also, it is just also looking at the key sectors that we have and actually invest in development in those sectors. If we look at the mining, how does technology enhance mining? You know, drone technology that can actually survey the land without needing a geologist to take the time to actually dig and get those samples, you know. How do we improve the mine environment? So that's just a practical examples of how technology can actually do this Internet of Things. When you go to agriculture, so drone technology still works there as well, you know. How do you actually make sure that you can view your crops, you can monitor the soil temperature, or, you know, any hazardous insects or anything that can actually damage your crops? As you're saying, the health, the issue there is that rural people still have to walk to go to the clinic. Some of them don't even make it to the clinic because the distance is so far. You can't be walking for 2 kilometers if you don't have a car. So how does technology enhance that, bringing IoT and that connectivity to actually have the doctor on hand? We've seen e-commerce with COVID, where you just need to order, don't go out of your house. How has that enabled the logistics industry? You know, and everybody is online now. It's changed drastically the eventing industry. So we just need to look at that in terms of what sectors are we big on, you know. what sectors have an opportunity and that can create jobs through technology. As much as some jobs will be lost along the way in the next few years, but many of new careers and new jobs are coming in. So the connectivity issue is still very critical. And the skills development, we cannot run away from skills development. It's probably right now one of the most critical aspects that we need to be focusing on. How do we upskill people for the jobs of the future? Or how do we upskill our people to actually understand? And also we need to decode technology, because people will think this is not for me, it's ICT. No, it's the things that you make use of every day. We don't have to always look at an IT specialist, but people just need to remove that and understand that this is a way of life. You interact with technology every day. And also we need to do more education around technology, remove the coding of fourth industrial revolution, just give people the opportunities. What does it look like? What can this do for you? Instead of just putting the codes, because that shuts a lot of people out. And you find out technologists are just talking amongst themselves and the rest of the people do not get along. Once you start explaining and breaking it down, even in the school level, even at community level, using also the doors like that IDO can open, just educating people, because our people are very creative. There's something about Africans that we have. And also, how do we take also that culture? You spoke about musicians. How do we take the culture, package it, and using the digital technologies to the world? Because that is our value proposition. We need to do that. So let's look at the industries where we excel. Let's define our value proposition as a continent, and then have a strategy of how do we use technology to actually enhance our value proposition. Our sectors are big. We've got the minerals, we're the richest continent, but how can we use that technology to actually give us value from the minerals that we have, and just cutting down the time that we spend and making it easy and giving us access. Agriculture, we've got so much land. How do we use technology for agriculture? So we need to start defining, maybe for each country, to say, what does each country has that can benefit from the technological advancement? First is defining and identifying what is it that you want to solve with technology. Then once you have identified, this is my problem, this is our problem as a country, this is an opportunity for us, and then you start with the technology process, because technology and transformation is actually 80% the people and 20% the actual technology. Then you bring your people along. The upskilling is critical. And for the people to actually understand the technology, break it, and actually show them the value of what they're going to get by using technology. A lot of people are still scared, saying the fourth industrial revolution is here to take my job. And one of the critical things, that's as you said, there's a fight with the East and the West and whoever, and you are on Google today, there's no Google store on a Huawei phone. What if something happens to Google? Have you ever wondered what will happen if something happens to Google? Because we have not invested in building our own Google. So easy. Where are you going? Google, Google Maps. What are you doing? What do you want to know about somebody? Go to Google. Everything is so Google. No, send me an email. It's Gmail. All of those things. But when something happens one day, just think what would happen, because we're not investing enough. Not that we don't have the brains. We just need an integrated strategy where people don't work in silos, and we bring all the stakeholders together through platforms like these, where we can have these critical conversations, and then they don't end up being conversations. We put the strategy and the implementation plans to say, how do we empower Africans in this digital era?
There's a techpreneur in our panel. Benedict, you have been in business, and as a techpreneur, doing business in our continent, what are some of the barriers that you would have come across, and some of the opportunities, talking to skills and to the environment that we have? And maybe some might look at it as lack, and from an entrepreneurial side, it might be a place of opportunity. What has been your experience, and where are we at the moment?
Yeah, thank you very much, Spukazi, Your Highness, and all protocols observed. Yes, very interesting points have been brought up also by Yandisa, definitely. And I would like just to start with almost like a little anecdotal moment of my time that I spent in Uganda. I had the pleasure of working in Uganda for 6 years. And I was part of at that time, actually, the government-funded corporation of German Development Corporation. And we were working in microfinance and together with banks and introducing technology. And we had some consultants actually from other governments there, some very enthusiastic person from the UK. And she said, I have a bright idea. I have a fantastic idea. What we're going to do, we're going to solve problems in the banking industry by using technology. And there was a long silence, and then, okay, good. So now, how are we going to go about this? and this is the key question, really. It's not so easy to just give this as a very general answer to that question, because how is this going to be done? And one of the things that I got to admire while I was in Uganda was that there is great chances of African countries to leapfrog as in they don't need to go through the same painful steps that many Western countries have taken, like the landlines. And when the landlines are done and exhausted, then you go to mobile phones. You can just take 2 steps at a time, and that would be such a possibility of moving straight on to mobile communication as it is happening and as we can observe in many countries now. But how do you do that? How do you take advantage of this leapfrogging of the basic technologies? And one key point is that you need to leverage applications that are needed by people. And one of the things that we see that are happening and spreading like a wildfire, not just in African countries, also in many other countries, is very basic technologies or applications rather that assist communication. Those applications that don't need a lot of training or skill set. Just look at Facebook and Instagram and similar things. Yes, they look like a leisure time and pastime application, but actually they attract a lot of people and they attract a high affinity for this technology and for the internet and for these devices that enable a young generation to have an interest and to be willing and interested in leveraging these things, creating apps on this platform that can do something. So there's really great opportunities here as long as we deal with something that enables people to communicate to other people. And one other thing maybe is that a thing that we are very concerned with in many Western countries is data protection. Now, I didn't see much of this happening in Uganda. Like the point is not so much to protect your data and to keep your data to yourself, but I can talk about this later a little bit when we were implementing a very interesting application in the rural area in the coffee chain, actually, gathering a lot of data of coffee farmers and leveraging that data. And at no point of time do we have to create any like data protection form or anything like that. It was very, everybody was very enthusiastic about sharing their data. And as it was used to the benefit of the participants, it was great to see how the system thrived and drove forward and was beneficial to everyone without these artificial barriers of data protection, but actually turning those into data opportunities. Like what happens if we share the data that we have freely amongst each other in order to create a benefit for the value chain that we look at, that we have, that we try to optimize here. It was a very good lesson to learn for me.
If I don't ask this question, we have a question that's being asked by Mr. Moses Obuya here. And if I miss on it, I would have done injustice to the time and era that we're in. He's talking about the 5G fears that we've had linked to sicknesses like COVID, and whether they are real or not is not the issue. But one of the things he's asking is, how do we deal with these types of fears? Because that in essence, to people who are not sure about technology, it doesn't help them with the enthusiasm of wanting to move forward. Because every time you then say we're introducing this, there's a counter argument in terms of how it affects health and all of those things. So one of the questions is, how do we deal with the fears, real or not, that have been pushed about 5G? Because I suppose this will affect the uptake that we have on tech. Are we promoting tech properly? And how do we find the balance between the effectiveness and evolution and moving forward and the health? How do we balance those? I'll ask each panelist maybe to take a minute around that. I'm just mindful of the time, and just maybe give me their opinion on it.
He's been all over, and I think in different parts of the world, it has been an issue. And we are no different. At some point, it was like 5G is causing COVID. There hasn't been any scientific proof that shows that there is an effect on 5G. Without being technical, these are one of the things that access to social media and this digital world brings. You can actually drive a narrative by just doing a post and actually do your target marketing and to drive the narrative for whatever reasons. And unfortunately, people do not have enough information to understand. They'll just read the headlines of what is being said and just believe that without having deeper knowledge. Maybe sometimes it's not even their responsibility to actually check, So, but that's a reality. I did say education is key when it comes to technology, bringing people and making sure that people understand. The 5G reminds me of my time. I'm from a rural area in the Eastern Cape. Before we had electricity, people didn't want electricity because somehow they believe that if there's lights that are on at night, the ancestors will not come. It was an engagement with the royal houses, with the chiefs and everyone to bring the community together and explain and take them through what this will bring, what opportunities this will bring. Once people understood what electricity will bring to them, then they actually change. And now we do have electricity in our rural area. Same as the towers of 4G and any other towers like telco towers. It was the same issue where the department, the telco that wanted to put up the towers, they had to get the Department of Health as well, and then come together with other stakeholders, go to the communities, explain what putting the tower will do for that community. The Department of Health had to explain the effects and to say there are no effects of this, and then explain the opportunity and how this will change their lives or will enhance their lives. It is more about educating people. So when you're working in different countries, I always say it is so important to also understand the culture, the history, the norms and the traditions there, whether you're rolling out technology, because that will impact a lot, So there's certain beliefs and also there's certain ways of doing things. So you need to also just understand all of those and how do you actually address the people? That is going to be the education part, which is really, really critical. But the information is out there. You can't stop people from sending out information. That's also a discussion for another day. But education is critical.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I still remember how when the mobile phones came out, and some friends of mine similarly were very careful not to store the phones in their bedrooms and put them away and shut them off. And the same was for the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi was actually timed, as in like it was supposed to be switched off after 8 o'clock because the radiation would just kill you in the long term. And I think by now we've all seen and observed just by experience that this has not happened. And despite some fears that get spread by more or less qualified statements, just through the benefit that it brings, and that people will realize of it eventually. So yeah, that's.
I would like to give you a different question, Mangaliso. Sisu has posted here a statement around the agricultural sensors, and he's asking a question saying if agricultural sensors we put in rural areas, would that not reduce the hiring cost and therefore and make the crop and the production of agriculture be far much more better than what it is at the moment? What's your take on the impact of, in this instance, is talking to sensors and all the e-agriculture, the evolution in that space?
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely familiar with the concept of sensors. What do you mean by sensors, or maybe just misunderstood that?
So any of the sensors you find in an agricultural space that you can put sensors on the soil to be able to measure the moistness, to sprinkle over any of the feed. I'm not an agriculture person, so you're gonna find me using the wrong wording. So all the activities that are normally done manually or by human intervention, if you have drones that can look at your crop instead of you walking your fields, it means that it reduces your time to walk around. That type of interventions, would it not improve the crop productivity in rural areas? And should we not be pushing for more of those types of solutions for Africa?
There's a significant benefit of that. I mean, just one basic driver for that is, if you look at today, actually at lunch, we just happened to talk about world population, and population growth is a big thing and a big driver in Africa, obviously, just like in many other countries. And if we look at the exponential growth, the need for more efficient usage of the land and a more sustainable usage of the land is huge and is enormous. Just if you think of some patches of land, for example, where I know that some crop is being grown or has been grown in Uganda, where you had like dips in the ground, and you would know that after these frequent rains, the water would just sit there and would actually make the food that was growing or trying to grow in these ditches would make it rot. So by going over it with drones, it was possible to spot these uneven points, and they were able to level the fields so that the crop would grow much more uniformly and better, and the yield would be much higher. So this would be to the great benefit of anybody participating in this agricultural activity. And yes, this would definitely be of a great help and a great support, and would be very wanted and very needed.
And to add to that, I think, Spokaza, this will actually create agripreneurs, as we call them. We need more entrepreneurs into the space. So with the use of technology, that is the use of IoT, which is the Internet of Things. So that will just make sure that we bring in more people into agriculture. So this is, I look at way back, we used to be so big in agriculture, especially in the rural communities in South Africa. That has sort of gone away. People chose jobs like being in the office, which was themed as the jobs to have at that time. And then people moved away from the hard labor jobs, and that what agriculture was bringing. You spend the whole day in the field. So with the use of technology now, it means you do not necessarily have to spend your whole day and sweat and do all of that in the fields. You can use technology to actually enhance your product and minimize your harvesting time or your agricultural time that you spend in the field. And also it enables you now to have more crop yield. That means more returns, you're growing, your business is growing, So if we look at that from that perspective, some people say it takes away the jobs now, I have to let go of people. But if you're bringing more yield and now you can do things faster, that means you have time to do other things, or you can grow your business much more quicker than what you would in a traditional way. So that's the way that we should be going, and now getting people into agriculture, because that's the lane that we have, and have more agripreneurs and have more platforms that connect this as small farmers, so that where they can share information, share knowledge, talk to each other, have them and give them platforms, access to funding, access to educational tools, grow their business, entrepreneurship skills as well. So I think agriculture is one of the sectors that will need to benefit or to use technology more, even mining and our culture and heritage.
I want to repeat on the words that Benedict said when he mentioned that Africa doesn't have to suffer all moving from a fixed phone to the new mobile phones. It can move from the second revolution straight up to the fourth industrial revolution with the access of technology. And I just want to thank all the panelists that were with us here, sharing their knowledge and their experience, their enthusiasm. I have learned a lot. I'm just mindful of the minutes that I was given by the program director. All of the topics that we shared here, we didn't even go on to the security discussion, which we started talking about. There's more to talk about in manufacturing, in education, in health, in various sectors. Fintech, we just scathed around it. We just mentioned the name. We didn't even go much in detail. And technology on its own would take up this whole day if we had it as much as a topic. But with that, I just want to appreciate everyone that's logged in. If there's any question that we haven't taken, I've looked at the question and answer, and we've taken on the question and the chats. We've tried to cover as much as we can. Thank you, Benedict. Thank you, Andisa, Mangaliso, and everyone else that's contributed. And on my side, I'd like to hand back to the program director. And thank you for affording us the opportunity and for everyone that has been listening to us.
Thank you, ICT team. Technology drives the way we do things today. With COVID prematurely giving us a mean wake-up call, we have had no choice but to embrace technology.
Thank you, Nsimfokazi. Yes, indeed, technology can be used to enhance productivity, minimize time, and maximize harvest time and rapid growth. Thank you for watching and be blessed.
Makina amina nara achamana